Hello, travel biz owner. Welcome to my corner of the travel industry, the Strategic Travel Entrepreneur Podcast. If you're ready to have fun, be inspired, get clarity, and take action in your travel business, then you're in the right place. Let's jump in. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Strategic Travel Entrepreneur Podcast. This one's going to be a more personal of an episode, and I'm really hoping that it helps give you some clarity within your business because lots have been going on this past couple of weeks and especially earlier this week. So I just wanted to share kind of like an insight into my world, what I'm personally doing to kind of help both my personal self, which will definitely trickle into my professional self, and how you might be able to like reflect and think on this as you make changes for your own business. Now, I do also have to shout out because I feel like a lot of the topic of discussion for this episode came, or like a fire was lit or like a light bulb was lit up thanks to Whitney from Masters in Travel and the Hive. So I'm going to have to reach out to her because she initially had a discussion on one of her episodes, I want to say a few months ago, about how if she doesn't go to bed like between like 10 and 12, she will be up between 2 and 4. And that is exactly the life that I had been living. I'm very much a night owl. If you tell me to wake up at 6 a.m. just because, I will not be a happy camper. And like even my events, we don't start early. We start like in the mid morning, so like 10 a.m. So you kind of like have a slower morning, kind of like ease into it. Because like I'm already thinking an event that I love going to that I'll be attending like this week, and that I'll be teaching some marketing classes at, is they're going to have very early starts, which is going to be very out of the norm for me. And I do it for that reason, but I can't do it on the long term. I am not I'm not one of those that I will be up at the crack of dawn. Nope. But I'm sure many of you can either relate to me or can relate to the opposite, that you are very much morning birds. But a lot of things had to change. Okay, we're gonna dive in deep. First, before we do that, I did want to let you know that I am currently hosting a flash sale of my consulting services. So if you have wanted to like pick my brain on anything about your business and specifically marketing about your business, niching down, content creation, maybe going into new markets, positioning yourself, any of those questions, I am happy to answer and like give you my opinion, my thoughts, and also kind of talk you down a ledge, because that's what I've done with some advisors on some recent consulting sessions. Like some advisors have thought like they needed to go all in on social media, and I'm like, actually, no, you don't. From what you're telling me, you do not need to go all in on social media. And I am running that. I don't know how, at least for the next week, I'll be running that. If you want to know more details about how that came to be, check out one of my recent reels on Instagram, because this is doing me a huge favor. I haven't opened up Boko Consulting in over a year now. And so I would really appreciate any support with that, or if you could just share that around so that we can help with some of my very unexpected medical expenses. So without further ado, and I'll put the link in the show description, let's get into how my personal life is affecting my professional life. And that sounds really horrible, but that's kind of where some of these changes are coming from and have spurred out, is because I have needed to make a couple of personal changes. Like I just mentioned, I was very much a night owl. So I know many of us got into entrepreneurship for the freedom and flexibility. And thankfully for me, like a lot of that flexibility kind of came in handy earlier this week, because I had a combo of an insurance snafu and a medical event. I have iritis again in my right eye, not my left eye like it's previously been in. Iritis is inflammation of the colorful part of your eye. And I'm also at the heels of going on a trip, which is why I'm like, this is the best and the worst timing that all this could have happened. And I feel like if I had not started making changes a couple of weeks ago, like this week would have felt a lot more chaotic without that, like starting to get in place. So let's talk about kind of like what my goal was for 2026, and then we'll get into like a little bit of the health changes that I'm making and how that's trickling into my business life. So if you recall, a couple months ago, I had mentioned that my word of the year for 2026 was going to be stability. And I kind of mentioned like I want to have a little bit of a more boring, predictable business. And I knew like going into 2026, like systems and structures were going to be a part of that stability, because frankly, sometimes entrepreneurship can feel a little bit chaotic. You're up one day, you're down one day. And I feel like we get a lot of like those rose-colored glasses moments, especially when we're looking at social media, which is why it's also so important for me to share the not so great times, because entrepreneurship is amazing. I don't want to be doing anything else. But it does have its more challenging times because it can feel so chaotic. But the amazing like highs that come from entrepreneurship, like they just can't be beat. And also life does throw you unexpected things here and there. And I feel like it is so much easier for me to handle it as an entrepreneur versus an employee working for somebody else. Because if you haven't been around for a minute, back in 2020, we all know what happened back then. It kind of affected me a little bit more, and my autoimmune disease, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, a lot more. Like I was feeling a lot of stress and anxiety, and I just was not able to cope. So I had to make a couple of changes at that time. But it was really hard to also get like medical assistance when you have a boss or you work for a workplace that isn't pro that happening. Like I had to make a lot of schedule changes, and I actually had a position that was pretty flexible. Like, thankfully, my last position working at a company was not one that like was, because I know that there's jobs that are reliant on like you have to be there, you have to be manning a desk, you have to like be on at all times. That was not my position. I was working in finance. I was doing scheduling. I could work on schedules in the morning, or I could work on them in the afternoon, or I could work on them in the evening. It didn't matter what time I worked on them as long as the work got done. And I was making up for my time. But you know, some people don't like offering that flexibility. And so like me trying to get better with all the stress and the chaos that was happening with me personally and medically was causing extra stress, because I knew that my boss, my company at the time, was annoyed, for lack of a better word, was annoyed that they were having to give me like so many changes. And I can understand that from some sort of perspective as like being a boss, not that I have employees or anything, but I can understand that. But what I didn't understand is in such a flexible job, like the task just needed to get done. It didn't matter when they got done. So that was adding an extra level of stress for me, which was also a big motivating factor why in May of 2021, I quit my job. I resigned. So fast forward all of that. I also want you to know that like for me, thinking about stability, I get like hair raised on the back of my neck, because like part of me thinks that stability does mean rigid routines, and I don't like doing rigid routines. I don't like feeling boxed in. I don't like feeling controlled. I don't like feeling like I'm losing that autonomy that I wanted to have building a business. But I'm starting to shift what that stability means for me. And that's kind of why I chose stability as my word of the year, because it does overall mean having supportive systems for you. And it does help. Like for me, it feels like I'm getting into a rhythm. And like, especially from this past week, it feels like having this stability and these supportive systems, it helps me to like recover and bounce back easier when things do get chaotic in my life. Also, some additional context in here is that I just couldn't continue with staying up until like 2 and 4 in the morning, because that's what my life was like as a hardcore, like extreme night owl. I'm trying to be like just a normal night owl, not an extreme night owl. And I was waking up anywhere between like 10 and 12. And that is, it doesn't work for me. And I don't want it to work for me, because my partner, who has now moved in with me, we've been living together for a couple of months, just realizing that we weren't having a lot of like together time, because he has a strict, rigid schedule. So his work schedule is 8 to 4:30. And so if I'm starting work at 12, he's already half done with his day by then. And so there was a lot of crossover between quality time and me still having work time to do. And so it just wasn't working on that level. Like, he is a saint and he had no issue with it. It was more me of having an issue and like me wanting to just improve things also for my health and my own well-being. And it's kind of hard to operate when you guys are both like working on different schedules. The biggest wake-up call, like, these were things that I had been feeling, but I was kind of dragging my feet on. But the biggest wake-up call came from a couple of weeks ago. I went in to see a specialist, and my blood pressure was really high. And my blood pressure had nothing to do with this specialist visit. And it was getting so high that they were considering putting me into the emergency room just to have me monitored. Thankfully, they did not do that, but I immediately started implementing health changes. And this specialist was like, you've got to start having like some movement. I need you to be having at least 30 minutes like of movement 3 to 5 times a week. I also need you to adjust your diet. It needs to be like this. And I would also like you to lose some weight. None of this information was new to me. And also him giving me kind of that structure was also very helpful. So I knew like exactly what I needed to follow. These were all things that I have known for at least a year. Like, I've known I've needed to change my habits. But I feel like the Taurus, which is my sun sign, the Taurus in me does not like change. And so it's very hard for me to make change unless I'm kind of like put in a corner, like I was put in a corner. And I don't know why that is how I operate. That is just how I operate. Let me know if you relate to that. Like, you do some of your best work and you make some of your best changes when you're put into a corner. And how this kind of intersected with business life too is that as a business owner, like, there's nobody who's enforcing any boundaries or telling you when to stop working or telling you to prioritize your health, because you are the business owner. Technically, you're the person that's supposed to be doing this for your own business. So if you are not making this a priority like I was, obviously it's kind of easier just to keep pushing things off because they don't feel as urgent. Because like, if I'm looking at those health priorities, initially I'm like, none of that's going to help make me money. Like, I need to be talking to people. I need to be networking with people. I need to be doing all of this. Like, that is going to make me money. However, if my health is affecting my business life, I am not able to work. And that just time and time again, if you are newer to the podcast, and also if you've been around here, thank you for being around here. Last year, I was dealing with a lot of like reproductive issues that I had to get a hysterectomy last year. No regrets on that. It is very nice. Life is very nice post-surgery, but I wasn't making all of the health changes that I needed to kind of like avoid this. And so I am very glad that with all of this happening, at least this is happening before a more serious health concern has happened. So we're kicking things off. So some of the habits that I've started implementing is that I'm going on daily walks, and it's just walks around the house. We've got a walking pad, so I'm trying to make sure that that gets set up. But right now I'm just walking around my house 30 minutes a day. Sometimes it's just 30 minutes. Sometimes I break it up 10, 20 or 15, 15, depending on just what's going on in that day. There's a lot of times, like if I'm feeling like really stressed, or if things are feeling like really chaotic and I can't hone in on them, I'll take a walk for 10 or 15 minutes. It'll help like clear my head, and I'll be able to come back to work a little bit more focused. So that's a big thing that has changed. And I definitely know the first 2 weeks I was huffing and puffing, very annoyed that I had to like stop whatever I was doing so I could make these walks happen. For me this week, because the first 2 days of this week were insane with trying to deal with insurance and trying to get a handle on this eye inflammation, when I started walking again on Wednesday, there was just so much calm. Like I could not wait to start walking and like getting back into my routine. And I think I'm starting to see like the shifts of where having this little bit of routine is really helping give me clarity, not only on a personal level, but also as a business owner, and also like giving me structure. So, really, really liking that, but I do have to keep entertained, or else those 30 minutes like seem very long. So I'll have like some TV show on in the background. So at least like I'm not totally like, oh my gosh, when is this 30 minutes done? The other big change that has happened in my life is that we are eating out less. We were ordering in all the time. And my blood pressure dramatically dropped when we stopped ordering in all the time. So now when we do order in, I'm a lot mindful of what we are, because that signaled to me that I was taking in way too much sodium, which was helping keep that blood pressure elevated. Now I have been monitoring my blood pressure, and it has not gotten anywhere near the levels of that specialist visit. So I'm very grateful for that. And I feel like a lot of that is like also me drinking more water and like being mindful of that. And just being more intentional, like walking and being more intentional with my meals, cooking more, being more mindful about like what is going into my body, but also not being so strict, because I don't know about you, but I am one of those people. I have always gone up, gone down, gone up, gone down in weight. And I'm feeling like the thing that's in common with all the past stuff is that I have gotten very strict. So I will do lots of limitations and lots of restrictions and not allow for quote unquote cheat days, like where I can have some indulgences. And I am not doing that this time. I'm being way more mindful with what I'm eating, so that I can reward myself when I want to be able to reward myself. So like this past weekend was helping my boyfriend eat a piece of cake because it was his birthday. We were celebrating his birthday with his family. I may have felt like a little bit guilty, and I'm like, I need to stop. Like there's a lot of patterns that are being broken this year, so that I can be a better version of myself. And I know it does sound funny, like just talking about eating more healthily. I don't know if that's a word, but I made it up. And also being able to indulge when you can, to have that balance, to make sure that this is more of a long-term change and not a short-term change. And I think about that a lot in my business too, because if things aren't easy for me, I'm not not going to do that. And I know I talked a little bit about this when I was talking about social media and also getting content ready in some of my recent episodes. And that's the same thing. Like, if lifestyle changes are not easy for me to implement, I'm not going to do them. So what is the easiest thing for me to change? I've also started creating a routine and a rhythm, and this was a little bit because of that specialist telling me a couple different things during that visit. So previously, I was taking showers, my night owl self, around like midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., just depended when I wrapped up work and got done, which was not a good thing, because the later I take a shower, the later I go to bed, the later I wake up, and there we go into that bad cycle, the cycle that was not working for me. So I think having like set times of things and also being flexible. So now I say that I want to be showered or in the shower around like 7 o'clock. Like, I know that that's kind of like my deadline, that I need to start thinking about that, so I can start transitioning out of work mode and transitioning into quality time with my partner. And like, we love watching different shows at nighttime, or just sending GIFs and memes and funny reels and things together. So that the goal is, if we can start that process around 7 o'clock at night, then around 10 o'clock, I can start the process of getting into bed, starting that nighttime routine, brushing my teeth and all that, for the goal to be that I start winding down and heading to bed around midnight, because we need to avoid that 2 to 4 a.m. going to bed. And that has been really helping and working with me. Now, this week has been a little bit insane, because I have been experiencing a lot of stress, a lot of really bad debilitating anxiety this week that has started easing up, thankfully. But when that kind of stuff happens, I just have no control over anything. So again, like, when things started easing up and I was able to start getting into my routines, I just felt more calm and more stable about things. Now, it is funny, ironic, I'm not sure what the exact word, but thinking about it, like, I was the person that used to think that structure was so constricting, and I think like that's why I've been fighting it so hard. But it has also been like so freeing for me and relieving for me. That's a really great word. Like, while I was feeling the chaos of Monday and Tuesday, like on Wednesday, I was like, okay, we're going to get back into things. We're going to be doing things like at the times that they need to be done at. Like, it just felt like such a sigh of relief. So if you have also been needing to add a little bit of structure, but fearing that it's been constricting, I also just wanted to share the story of how, like, if you're doing it a certain way with flexibility, it doesn't need to be feeling like that. It doesn't need to feel like you are boxed in. It doesn't mean that you're losing flexibility. I would say that you're almost giving yourself a little bit more flexibility by giving yourself some structure. And being a business owner, a lot of things like used to run in my head a lot, but putting these like little systems in place for my personal life has helped reduce some of that noise. Like, where I'm like, I don't know what I need to do, I have 50 million things to do. It's kind of reduced that noise in my head, that I don't have to be worrying about that. And really, like, candidly, without structure, everything is just living in your head. And how many times have I told you you need some sort of system so it doesn't live in your head, so that you can rely on something else and have yourself worrying about either things that are important, or like not even worrying, just being able to be happy and joyful and enjoying your life, knowing that things aren't going to collapse because they're not in your head all the time. Things feel very urgent also if you're not having that structure. So being able to have some like boxes in place helps you to feel, and definitely is helping me to feel like, okay, like I don't have to worry, like this is what needs to be happening. And it does also feel like if you're not having that structure, everything is competing for attention. Like, I think about that what is it, that scene in Finding Nemo where all of the seagulls are like, mine, 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 mine. That's kind of how it feels like in your head when you don't have any structure in place. But when you do add that, it does give you some guidance and anchors, and it does. What I love about this is that you have less decisions to make. So that decision fatigue kind of eases and goes away because you kind of have that structure. Now, something that I forgot to mention at the beginning of this too is that I do not have children. And that does make having these changes put in place a little bit easier because I don't have to rely on their schedules as well. Because I know as parents, rock stars you are, there's a lot of different factors that go into kind of putting structures into place, and like the kids have to have their own structures because they are tiny humans that need that in place as they're growing and developing. So I say that because I don't want you to think like, oh, it was so easy to make these changes, because it was not, but I do understand that is a little bit easier not also having to think about little people or older little people that you have to take care of being in the fold in this too. So one of the biggest things that I've been realizing is that structure can be your decision-making tool. And I want to repeat that because I feel like that is such a powerful thing, is that structure can be a decision-making tool. And I think I've known this without knowing this, because when I decide my word of the year, that helps drive a lot of things. Like, am I going to invest in this? Am I not going to invest in this? I've always used the structure of the word of the year to figure out like my answers on some of those decisions, because if it didn't align with my word of the year, I was not going to do it. It wasn't going to fall in there. So being able to say like, I need to start winding down my day around 7 o'clock at nighttime, it's easier for me to say, no, I can't do this thing because I need to start winding down, or else I'm still going to be wound up. Now there's some flexibility when it comes to that, because I know sometimes networking events will be in the evenings. I know also I love going to see Broadway when I can here coming to Orlando. So that will also like flex the rules, but as a general kind of like rule, quote unquote, I want that to be my cutoff time. So it helps me to kind of like say yes to things, say no to things, or also be mindful, should I be a little bit flexible on this thing? I have also started to document some of the yearly, monthly, and weekly responsibilities that I have, so they're not all floating in my head. And that also, like, I can keep track of things like, okay, what needs to happen this week? Should I do it a little bit earlier because this is happening? Should I do it a little bit later because this is happening? It also helps like keep things like, right now, one of the things that I'm thinking about is in the state of Florida, to keep your LLC, you have to file that annually, and that has to be done before May 1st. I'm also thinking we're in the middle of tax time, so we've got to get everything in order for taxes. Those are kind of the yearly business activities that are kind of looming that need to go into this document that I'm working on, so that they're not looming and that I also keep track of this. I think like that's a lot of what I've been working on, because when I think about the lead generation accelerator that we've just kicked off recently, I feel like it's so much easier to have that tracker that I've created that's kind of tracking all the activities and relationship building things that the advisors are having to do in that program, with having a tool that says like, it's flexible when things can be done, but you need to be doing these things in order to be getting results in your travel business. And so I feel like all of this like documentation just makes it easier for you also to make decisions and to have less things floating in your head. Because the document, well, yes, it can be flexible, but the document is giving you guidance instead of you just coming to the table every day being like, oh, what should I be doing right now? I have all these things that I have a final payment. I have to do this itinerary, but there's so many things that I don't really know what to do right now. I feel like having some sort of structure is going to be like that guiding light, that North Star that we're all needing. definitely to help you reduce that decision fatigue, the overwhelm, and also getting you some clarity on your priorities so that you don't have to, like, again, be coming to the table, be like, having to figure out what you need to be doing. So this week, what has kind of like transpired is that there was a insurance issue. I had an iritis flare up. I had 2 days of chaos this week, and it really, I felt like it was going to derail my week, especially as I'm preparing to go and travel. But I honestly think the small changes that I have just mentioned to you, between diet changes, exercise changes, also adding some like bases on timing changes, have made it feel not as chaotic as kind of I get out of the cloud. And again, like, I am just so grateful that I'm kind of like back in this routine and I'm resuming everything. I feel like if I didn't have some of that stuff in place, I would probably be feeling a little bit more overwhelmed at this point than what I am currently. So it is nice to have some of those things in place. Stability overall does support performance. And while I did lose kind of like a day and a half of working, I don't feel like I lost too much. And I feel like that's because flexibility was kind of built in this week. What I have always done historically, and I guess this is a support structure that I didn't realize, is that when I will be traveling, I try and make my call schedule a little bit lighter so I don't feel so overwhelmed. And I think that is something that has also helped me, because I love scheduling calls, but having calls scheduled do take away from work time, unless of course it's a consulting session, because that is work time. So while I do love building relationships, I'm also like, I still have my to-do list to knock off here. So it is both productive, and those are some of the things that I try and reduce and give me a little bit more calm. So I feel like past me had future me in my in my viewpoint without like directly knowing it. And having that, like, it's kind of like I had my back without knowing that I was going to need to have my back there as well. So kind of to wrap this up, I just want you to like be aware, like, entrepreneurship can be one of the greatest things, but it will always involve some sort of unexpected issue, either in your personal life or your professional life. There's always some sort of problem that's going to come up. This can be a little problem. This can be a big problem. Like, little problem, I'm seeing like maybe a tech snafu. Maybe like a tech isn't working. It's down. A bigger problem can be like some of the things that we've experienced, like TSA being down, global entry being down, which thankfully it is now back up, which causes like a lot of havoc worldwide. And lots of the things that are just happening worldwide cause a lot of issues for travel advisors and their travelers. And then, of course, there's always life curveballs that are happening. Sometimes they're great curveballs, sometimes there's not great curveballs. And really, what you need to keep in mind is that if you are not flexible, it's going to be really hard to be a successful travel advisor, because no day is the same. I love asking the question of like, what does a typical day look like? Because I know everybody gives a different answer. And I also know not every day is going to be the same, because you just don't know what's going to pop up. But that's where some of having these systems and having these rules, I don't like using the word rules. I'm going to have to find a different word for that. But it does help so that you can not have things go sideways when it feels like they might be going sideways. So I know like this is kind of like my 3rd week into some of these healthy habits, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the next couple of months and sticking with this and not like going off the wayside with this. And I'm really hoping that this is like, again, I mentioned I go up, down, up, down. I just hope that I stay up on this ride of health moving forward. I know that that's not always going to be the case, but if we can get these habits into place, I know I will be a stronger person, I will be a stronger partner, and I will be a stronger business owner, and I'm definitely going to be a stronger mentor from all of my learnings. So, and that means like there's more stability overall. That means I can have better quality time with my partner. This means that I can have clearer decision making when it comes to things coming into business. And this does mean that I have an earlier recovery time when life does life, as it so does quite often. So I know this was a different episode, but I thought it was really important for me to share and just be fully transparent on kind of what's been going on in my life and how I'm adapting my personal life to also get my professional life in check. So I really hope that this was helpful and also had you thinking about a couple of things yourself. The next couple of episodes I will be pre-recording because I am sailing aboard Travel Marketplace on the river. It's a custom 10-day itinerary. I am super excited for this. I am teaching 2 marketing masterclasses on board and facilitating an action-taking workshop. Because you know me, I love to teach, but me teaching kind of doesn't mean as much if you're not implementing and using the things that we're teaching and educating and talking about. And I am really excited about my 2 topics about finding right fit clients and then also content creation for discoverability. So cannot wait. I'm also planning to conduct a couple podcast interviews on the ship. So if there's anything that you would love to know about like a custom itinerary, sailing aboard AMA waterways, river cruise life, let me know and I will try and make sure that we get that recorded on the podcast. But thank you so much for listening, for being here. Remember, I've got that flash sale offer for you. So take a look. And if that is going to be helpful for your business, I would love to help support you. And I will see you all next week. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today. Remember to check out the show notes for all relevant links and resources from today's show. See you next time.